Hi, this is the voice, Michael Chavello. You're listening to the Premium Oddscast, hosted by leading MMA odds maker Nick Kalikas, fight scientist and author of Fightnomics Reed Kuhn, and MMA journalist Brian Heminger. The absolute best UFC betting info, hits, statistics, and analysis from the most respected authority in mixed martial arts betting, MMAOddsbreaker.com.
Welcome to the Premium Oddscast, presented by 5 Dime Sportsbook. I'm Brian Heminger, joined today by leading mixed martial arts odds maker Nick Kalikas to break down this Saturday's UFC Fight Night 99 event, which takes place in Belfast, Northern Ireland. If you're unfamiliar with our format, myself and Nick will break down the fight card from top to bottom, providing extensive analysis and a pick for each fight after doing our film study for the event. Looking back at our last event, we went 3-4 on our premium bets for UFC 205 to lose 2.05 units overall. Although we did win our 1 unit free bet on the Vicente Luque inside the distance prop at plus 300. Back to the present, UFC Fight Night 99 features a 14 fight card in total and will be aired on UFC Fight Pass this Saturday afternoon. Let's dive right in. Now, kicking off the fight card in the first fight of the night, a battle of a pair of UFC newcomers features Charlie Ward, who is 3-1, and Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who is 6-0. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Al Hassan at minus 405, the comeback on Ward at plus 285. Looking over at our sponsored sportsbook right now, 5dimes.eu. Currently, Al Hassan minus 350, the comeback on Ward is plus 260. So a little bit more action coming in on Ward early on. Al Hassan, though, is the more popular, the more hyped fighter, undefeated prospect. This is definitely a good card, a good fight to start the card off with for sure. I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker throughout this whole podcast. Of course, we have Fight Night 99 and Fight Night 100 to break down. So we have like 27 fights between Brian and I to record here and give you guys analysis on. So we'll try to do our best to shorten things up a little bit, but still get to the point. So getting into this fight again, should be fireworks, really. You have two guys that are willing to stand and bang. Al Hassan, again, is the more popular fighter. He's an explosive athlete, striker with precision and huge KO power. Really, his boxing, if you look at him, I mean, he throws together combos very nice. He's got a nasty uppercut to go along with it. I mean, the way he mixes things up and the accuracy behind his punches to go along with that power, definitely devastating. He's been working on his wrestling. His takedown defense has definitely improved as well. His overall game, of course, he's got some judo to go along with it. And he's been working with team takedown. So I think it's a really good scenario for Al Hassan to make a positive impact in the welterweight division. And the UFC's probably feeding him somebody to start things off well with. Now, Ward is no slouch. I mean, he's definitely a very strong athlete himself. He trains with Conor McGregor. He's friends with him. I mean, that's where his popularity a little bit comes from. There's also some other things that Brian's going to get in a little bit more detail about next. But overall, as a fighter, I mean, Ward is, again, very powerful. He's been fighting back and forth at middleweight. He's dropping back down to 170 to take this fight, though. And he's basically an aggressive brawler, in my opinion. He's powerful, but a bit wild at time. He does leave some openings on the feet. That's not going to be a good scenario against Al Hassan. He does also look to go for takedowns often and kind of uses some ground and pound and kind of grinds people out as well. So on the feet, he's capable of doing damage and knocking people out. He's just going to be at a disadvantage here against Al Hassan. So he's going to want to take this fight to the floor, get the fight down, and kind of grind Al Hassan out. I don't think he's going to have success doing that. So that's why I'm going to pick Al Hassan. I think Al Hassan will find his spot and he will finish Ward along the way. So I'm picking Al Hassan by TKO KO. That's my official pick.
Yeah, this fight is definitely interesting, mainly because two UFC newcomers. Ward is fighting in his backyard. He's from Ireland, trains with Conor McGregor. This to take place in Northern Ireland. So that should help him a little bit, maybe overcome some of those jitters, especially because he's one of the least experienced fighters to make their UFC debut in a while. So, that should help him. But again, I think it's going to be difficult because, Abdul Razak Al Hassan is a monster. I mean, this guy was a judo champion, just physically manhandling people in judo, transitions to MMA, and he is just stomping people with his striking. He's not really using the judo at all. He basically goes out there, leg kicks people from distance, and then just starts brawling, and every one of his fights has been in less than 90 seconds. So, I've just been really impressed with, Al Hassan. The big question mark with him, of course, is what's going to happen if a fight goes long? How is his conditioning? There's just a lot of question marks with Al Hassan based on that. And the thing Nick mentioned that I'd be touching on is Charlie Ward. Honestly, the thing he's most famous for, and it's not a great thing to be famous for, is earlier this year, he faced an opponent, Joao Carvalho, a Portuguese fighter, and he got a TKO stoppage over him. And 2 days later, Carvalho died. He passed away. So, that's definitely something that's always going to be in the back of Charlie Ward's head. But I mean, if you go back and watch the film, it doesn't seem like anything was, too crazy compared to any other fight. I mean, maybe the ref jumped in a little late, but that's something that's always going to be in the back of Charlie Ward's mind. Maybe that could affect him in this fight even. So, that being said, overall, in terms of pure skill, I'd say Ward, he mixes things up better than Al Hassan. He's gone the distance a couple times, so that should help him if he survives the early blitz from Al Hassan. But for the most part, Al Hassan is just so deadly that I think, he just has that power and that ability to just get in there and take opponents out. I think, this is Al Hassan's fight to win. So, I'm gonna pick, Abdul Razak Al Hassan as well. Just a good, solid Team Takedown member, making his UFC debut. Now dropping all the way down to the bantamweight division, we have Brett Johns, who is 12-0, taking on Kwan Ho Kwak, who is 9-0. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
I opened Johns minus 230, the comeback on Ho Kwak at plus 170. Right now, looking over at 5 dimes, it is currently Brett Johns at minus 220, the comeback on Kwan Ho Kwak at plus 180. So line margins have tightened up a little bit. It seems like a solid two-way action type of line right now. I mean, we're talking about Kwan Ho Kwak first. He's definitely a pretty intriguing prospect in his own right. He's only 27 years old, coming from a solid camp. And I think he really, from what you see, he's definitely a pretty neat and fun to watch type of fighter. He's a KO artist, a legit striker, really. He pushes a high pace. He's really aggressive, has KO power in both hands. Nice speed and footwork as well. So on the feet, he's legit. I mean, the guy is definitely a threat. He's got pretty decent takedown defense too. So in most cases, he's able to keep the fight upright and do some damage. That's why he hasn't lost yet. He's able to outstrike most opponents. But there is spots in fights going back and watching tape on him that he can be put on his back and controlled a little bit. Now, that being said, in most cases, he's able to scramble back up well and again continue to strike. So that's what he's going to want to do, because if any advantage at all over Brett Johns, it's going to be his striking. So Kwak is the type of fighter that's going to come in, look to stand and bang, look to put Johns out here. It's not going to be as easy as said, though, because Johns is a very talented fighter in his own right. Of course, he's got, I guess, a background that's more familiar to a lot of fighters out there because he's fought at Titan before. He was actually the Titan title holder in the bantamweight division before as well. So the guy has a good pedigree because he's also been on Cage Warrior cards. So again, he's more familiar, I think, to the average MMA fan, the diehard MMA fan community, I should say, overall. And Johns is a talented fighter in his own right. I think his striking is decent. It's always improving. It's getting better. He can be effective on the feet. But more than anything else, Johns' wrestling, his ground game, his submission game, that's where I think the money's at for Brett Johns here. I mean, that's where he usually dominates his opponents, and he's able to just push a high pace and a relentless pace and basically have his way with most people on the ground. I think that's where his advantage over Kwak is going to be in this fight as well. The question mark surrounding Johns, though, is he has been a little bit injury prone. I mean, he's had shoulder surgery during training. It kept on popping out, so he had to get that addressed. We do have a good interview up on our site, MMAoddsbreaker.com, so check that out. Brett Johns, we have a couple interviews with him, so you could definitely pick up some nice information there as well. But, I mean, with his knee issues in the past as well, I mean, if he stays healthy and is able to make weight, that's another thing I should mention as well. He's had some weight issues at times, so we'll see if he can even make 135. Hopefully he does, because I'll tell you what, sky's the limit for Brett Johns. I think if he can keep himself happy, or healthy, I should say, which, of course, the weight cuts, making the weight cut will make him happy. But if he keeps himself healthy and is able to just, I guess, keep fighting at a steady pace, man, I mean, there's no telling how far this guy can get in the UFC bantamweight division. So I do believe that Johns is going to be able to control enough of this fight and at least outpoint Kwak. I think it's going to be a difficult fight. It's not going to be an easy task for Johns, but I think he can get the job done. I think he could basically grind Kwak out and get a decision win, if not maybe finish late as well. So I think the overall skill of Brett Johns here is going to trump Konho Kwak. But that being said, it should be a pretty entertaining fight and should be interesting. But I do think Johns will have a successful UFC debut, and I'm expecting him to look pretty good doing it.
Konho Kwak is a little bit more of a traditional stand-up focus, pretty solid kicks, and when he does get taken to the ground, most of his game revolves around avoiding damage and getting back to his feet or stalling out and trying to maybe get a ref to step in. He doesn't really offer a lot offensively or defensively on the ground. So that is definitely where Johns is going to have the biggest advantage. Johns is a pretty decent stand-up fighter, but he doesn't pack a lot of power in his hands. It's more he can just push a decent pace. He can make his opponents respect him on the feet. He can score points, but I don't really see him stopping a lot of guys in this stand-up, at least not yet. Maybe down the line when he learns to, sit down on his punches a little bit better. But for now, he definitely still has a ways to go. Now, on the ground, though, Johns is ferocious. Most of his wins in his career so far, most of his finishes have all been by submission. So if he can drag his opponent to the ground, then I expect him to get top position, maybe get a dominant position, pass guard, eventually find a choke. That's usually his bread and butter, is some sort of choke. So, Brett Johns, he's a guy, as Nick mentioned, he's fought in Cage Warriors, he's fought in Titan, and he was the champion in both promotions and never was defeated to lose his title. What actually happened in both cases was he missed weight due to injuries or whatever reason and ended up getting stripped of his title in both promotions. So that is something that we'll have to keep a close eye on in this fight because, Johns needs to make weight if he wants to be a bantamweight, if he wants to be competitive in the UFC. Fighters that miss weight do not usually have a long career, especially if they do it right out the gate. So I think, Brett Johns, this is his fight to lose. He definitely is the more well-rounded fighter, and I think that ground game is going to come into play for sure. And as long as he's healthy and he makes weight and doesn't seem to have any major issues, then I think he should win relatively convincingly. So my pick is going to be Brett Johns. Now, sticking with the bantamweight division, now on the women's side of things, we have Marion Renaud, who is 6-3, taking on Milana Dudieva, who is 11-4. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Up in Renaud, minus 215, the comeback on Dudieva at plus 165. Looking over 5 times right now, it is actually Renaud minus 220, the comeback on Dudieva is plus 180. So basically, again, line margins tighten up. Line basically stayed the same. Probably a little bit more parlay action coming in on Renaud. This is, I don't know, kind of a clear-cut fight. I mean, both ladies are definitely talented. Both of these ladies deserve to be, I think, in the mix in bantamweight. I mean, obviously not towards the top, but kind of somewhere in the middle tier. Renaud has looked and performed, I think, above expectations in a lot of ways. I mean, she's had some pretty impressive performances, even, against Holly Holm, fighting the former champion and faring pretty well in that fight as well. So there's just, throughout her career so far, Renaud has performed, like I said, pretty decent. I know she had a letdown and a bit of controversial loss in her last outing, but I think she's going to rebound here nicely over Dudieva. And I think it's going to be a pretty competitive fight, though. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fight exactly, because I do think there's a lot of similarities between the two ladies. I just think that Renaud, it basically has pretty much every category checked off here. She's going to have a reach advantage. She's going to be the bigger fighter. I think she has better stand-up overall. I think on the ground, the wrestling, it could go back and forth a little bit. I think Renaud is a little bit more slick with her offensive submissions a little bit. Dudieva does have a good sub game as well, though, so that'll be interesting. It's going to see who. I guess the biggest question mark in this fight would be who does have the true ground advantage. Again, I think Renaud has basically every category checked off, so it's hard not to lean her way. I expect it to be a competitive fight. Dudieva's going to come fight. She's going to want to kind of impress and belong in the UFC roster, or like basically prove to everybody that she deserves to be there, because again, her performances haven't really been as good as Renaud. But again, I think this fight and this matchup, the way she matches up, she could probably hang with Renaud and make it a competitive type of decision. She might even steal one. So, but with all that being said, it's not really a confident pick because I do expect this fight to be competitive, but I got to lean Renaud's way. So again, I think she just is a better fighter from top to bottom. She's going to have the reach advantage, and I think she's probably going to push a higher pace as well. So my pick is going to be Renaud to win. Yeah,
this is definitely a bit of a tricky matchup, but if you look a little bit closer, think you can see why Renault should be the favorite here. If you go back, Renault's only true UFC loss to me was against Holly Holm, who would go on to win the women's championship. In Renault's last fight, she took on Ashley Evans Smith, and in my opinion, I thought Renault won that fight. I thought she outstruck Smith. I mean, Smith pushed a decent pace, but that was definitely Renault's fight, in my opinion, and Smith ended up walking away with a split decision victory. So I don't think Renault should have lost too many points in the eyes of the fans based on that performance. And Dudeva, on the other hand, has not impressed me really at all so far in her UFC run. UFC debut was against Elizabeth Phillips, and she didn't look that good. I mean, she got outstruck 2-1, but she did pick up a couple takedowns, and ended up getting a split decision win. And then when she faced Juliana Pena, she got absolutely crushed. I mean, just smoked, taken down, and then just pulverized on the canvas with a ground and pound, first round TKO. And I don't think she landed one strike in that fight either. And then she's been out ever since because, she actually, became mother, had birth, and she has not fought since, April 4th. This is her first fight in a year and a half since then. So, I expect, that takes a lot out of you, pregnancy, all that stuff. I expect she's going to come back a little bit rusty, and that is not what you want to do against somebody like Renault, who is a very solid overall counter striker on the feet. And honestly, I think Renault's ground game is definitely underrated. I mean, she pulled off a pretty impressive submission against Jessica Andrade. So, Renault is a tough cookie, and the only thing that I think Dudeva has an advantage of in this fight is I believe she is a little bit better in terms of pure offensive wrestling. So maybe she can get some takedowns, but I would expect, even if she does, that Renault would be very dangerous with arm bars and triangle chokes off of her back. Renault is going to have a huge reach advantage, monstrous, like 7 inches in this fight. So that is, I think, going to give her a big edge on the feet. And on the ground, I think Renault's offensive submission game, even off of her back, should threaten Dudeva enough that even if Dudeva gets top position, that she won't be able to stay there. Maybe she gets swept, maybe she gets submitted. So my pick is going to be Marion Renault to pull off the victory. Now moving up to the welterweight division, we have Zach Cummings, who is 19-5, taking on Alexander Yakovlev, who is 23-7-1. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up at Cummings, minus 230. The comeback on Yakovlev at plus 170. Right now, it's Cummings actually minus 170. Yakovlev is at plus 150. So, dog action coming in early. I can respect it. I mean, Yakovlev is definitely one of those fighters that's always flying under the radar, not getting a ton of betting respect from the public out there. There is some sharp action that's coming his way, and he's been successful and backed that up a little bit. So Yakovlev is not going to be an easy out for most. Really, I mean, even when he dropped down to lightweight, he actually had some success down there. Of course, now he's bounced back to welterweight. I think obviously he's more comfortable at welterweight, and he can hang with most of the guys in his division. Unfortunately, it depends which styles, which fighters they match up with him. Obviously, in his last fight, he didn't have that much success, but I mean, that was again stylistically, it was a pretty bad matchup for him against Usman, and Usman was able to take him down and control him a little bit there. But this fight against Cummings, I mean, even though Cummings does have similarities there, because Cummings has pretty good wrestling and takedown ability, I think Cummings doesn't have really the success or the wrestling pedigree that Usman does. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a better fight for Yakovlev. But that being said, man, it's a tough fight because I think Cummings almost in every category across the board. Again, I was just talking about it with Renault over Dudeva. I think in this case for Cummings, he's basically the better fighter over Yakovlev in every area as well. I think striking will be pretty competitive, pretty close. But, I mean, compared to what Ponzinibbio was bringing in his last fight for Cummings, I think that Yakovlev's definitely a step down as far as the striking department goes, even though, again, you can't underestimate him. Now, Yakovlev definitely has improved in that area. He showed that he has enough power to stop people in that area now as well. So Cummings cannot underestimate Yakovlev's striking. But I think on the feet, it will be competitive. I do give the slight edge to Cummings overall. On the ground, These guys are both very skilled on the ground, both capable of submissions offensively and getting submitted defensively, though, unfortunately for both as well. But overall, honestly, I think their sub defense is pretty good and underrated as well. Yakovlev's been in there with the likes of Damian Maia and hasn't got submitted as of late. So, and again, Cummings, basically the same thing. The last really legit jiu-jitsu practitioner that got him was Gunnar Nelson. So, losing to guys like that, you can understand. Those guys are elite level grapplers. So against each other, I think they'll neutralize the grappling game out a little bit. If anything, Cummings probably controls the top position a little bit more often than Yakovlev. And I think Cummings will probably outpoint Yakovlev a little bit more on the feet as well. So I'm expecting a competitive type of fight, decision probably. And I think Cummings probably gets a nod. So I'm going to lean his way.
I'll give Alexander Yakovlev some credit. He definitely has taken his game to a bit of another level in his last couple fights. He was a guy that I thought was just going to come into the UFC, get steamrolled by some top guys, and then just be gone. But he proved some staying power with his win over Gray Maynard, and then just blasted George Sullivan out of nowhere, which was super impressive. And that definitely earned my respect. Now, obviously, his last fight didn't go the way he wanted, but against somebody like Kamaru Usman, who is just one of the best wrestlers in the entire UFC roster, pound for pound, you got to expect that. He just got taken down and couldn't really get anything going whatsoever for the whole fight. This time around, I don't expect that to happen, although Zach Cummings is a huge welterweight, and Cummings is going to be a bit of a threat with the takedown, but Cummings likes to stand and bang as well. So I think this fight is, for the most part, going to be taking place on the feet. Now, in the stand-up, Yakovlev does have some pretty decent one-punch power, as demonstrated by the victory over Sullivan, but he doesn't throw great combinations. I have not been super impressed with his overall striking technique. He definitely is dangerous, and if he connects with that one shot, you can be in trouble, but I've actually been more impressed with the improvements that Cummings has showed in his stand-up. Now, obviously, Cummings didn't have the best showing in his last performance against Santiago Ponzinibbio either, but again, that's the guy that pushes one of the highest paces in the entire welterweight division in terms of stand-up, and Cummings just couldn't keep up. Now, if Cummings is able to mix things up here against Yakovlev, I think that he should be able to hold his own on the feet, if not get the better of the stand-up exchanges against Yakovlev. And if he wants, I think he can clinch and potentially drag Yakovlev to the ground as well. So I just see a lot of advantages for Cummings. Even in the reach department, Cummings has a very slight reach edge. So I just think this is a Zach Cummings fight to lose. Yakovlev might be a little bit concerned about Cummings taking him down, so that might make him be a little more tentative with his striking as well, and he's already not fighting at an extremely high pace in the stand-up already. So I'm going to side with Zach Cummings. I think that he pulls this one out either by decision or maybe even a submission along the way if he does get this to the floor. So my pick is Zach Cummings. Now moving all the way up to the heavyweight division, we have Justin Ledet, who is 7-0, taking on UFC newcomer Mark Godbeer, who is 11-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Ledet minus 155, the comeback on Godbeer at plus 115. Right now it's Ledet minus 150, Godbeer's at plus 130. There is two-way action that has come in on this fight early on. It was towards Godbeer. As we speak, a little bit more towards Ledet. So, again, two-way opinion, two-way action on this fight. Two heavyweights that really like to stand and bang and can do some damage on the feet as well. So another probably fun and exciting fight for as long as it lasts. Now, again, both these guys are probably tough enough that they can withstand a little bit of punishment along the way, but both of them guys can definitely dish it out as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Overall, I've liked what I saw from Ledet in his last fight. He faced a pretty tough, again, hyped opponent in Chase Sherman. That was a pretty good fight. Chase Sherman definitely made it interesting with those leg kicks he was bombing at Ledet. But overall, Ledet, his footwork, his boxing ability, obviously Ledet has a boxing background, and it showed there. He was able to pick Chase Sherman apart overall and get the decision there. I think which was a fair decision. He was a better fighter that night for sure. But he was under pressure, and I think Godbeer is going to bring him basically the same type of style. Godbeer is definitely a talented fighter, especially in the striking department. He does like to push forward. He pushes a high pace. He's very aggressive with the strikes, but it's not all slop. I mean, I thought, digging into Godbeer a little bit deeper, of course, we've seen him for Bellator and other situations again, but looking back on some of his past fights, I was expecting a little bit more sloppiness from Godbeer, but overall, I mean, with that kind of power, he does get a little wild at times, but he keeps himself under control and maintains pretty clean technique. So it's pretty impressive to see that as well. The thing with Godbeer is, I mean, he did retire from MMA in the past as well. So I got to bring that up in late 2015. So not long ago, and it was due to injuries. So he kind of got fed up with being injured and not being able to fight as consistently as he wanted, and he hung it up. But he decided to come back, of course, getting the shot in the UFC or whatnot. Obviously, you got him remotivated and got him, back into the right mental aspect, I guess. He's going to have to be in a fight like this with Ledet, because there's not the situation where you can think retirement and go out there and be successful, especially in the UFC heavyweight division. So Godbeer does have a decent pedigree behind him though as well. He's a former Bama heavyweight champion. So he's worn gold on the smaller circuit. He knows what that feels like. So I don't think he's going to be under the pressure too much of the big show in this spot, and he's going to come and he's probably going to perform pretty well. So I'm expecting, again, another competitive type of fight. Godbeer is going to try to push forward a little bit. Ledet's probably going to be using his footwork and movement to try to pick Godbeer off. And I think what's going to happen as the fight progresses is Ledet's going to be a little bit more successful. He's going to land a little bit more often, and he's going to maybe eventually land clean enough to put Godbeer out. If not, I think he ends up winning on the scorecards as well. So got to respect Godbeer, but I don't think he's going to get the job done in his debut here. I think Ledet's going to get his second win in the UFC heavyweight division, and then we'll see where he goes from there.
The good news for Mark Godbeer is that Justin Ledet is not going to be trying to take him down. That has definitely been Godbeer's Achilles heel throughout his career. Guys that want to close the distance, push a fight into the clinch, get it to the floor, and then just beat him up or try to get a submission, you name it, on the canvas. Godbeer has awful takedown defense. His ground game is not good, and he has definitely been exposed in that department. But Justin Ledet is a type of fighter that wants to keep his distance, use footwork, showcase his range, land straight punches, land jabs, and that's exactly how Justin Ledet was able to pick up the victory in his UFC debut against Chase Sherman. As Nick mentioned, he did eat a lot of leg kicks early in that fight, but he just kind of absorbed them, and then second and third round completely took over. So conditioning, I will say, is probably on Justin Ledet's side. I would say pure striking technique is on Justin Ledet's side. I'd say footwork, maneuverability, probably quickness is on Ledet's side. But what Godbeer does have going for him is aggression and power. If Godbeer can close the distance, make this more of a brawl than a technical battle, then Godbeer can definitely win it. I mean, the guy hits incredibly hard. He loves to stand and bang. And without the threat of the takedown, he might be able to be a little bit more aggressive than he was in, say, the fight that most people have seen him compete in before against Czech Congo, where he just got completely thwarted by a guy that didn't want to stand and trade with him hardly at all. So I expect this fight to be a little bit more competitive than people give it credit for, but I still like Ledet's technical advantage over Godbeer here. So I'm going to side with Ledet, either getting a decision or maybe a late TKO as Godbeer starts to slow down. So my pick is going to be Justin Ledet. Now, dropping down to the women's strawweight division, we have Anna Elmos, who is 3-1, taking on Amanda Bobby Cooper, who is 2-2. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in Elmos, minus 165 to come back on Cooper at plus 125. To my surprise, the line has shifted a little bit, and it is currently Cooper minus 130 to come back on Elmos plus 110. So line flipped. It was sitting at pick 'em for a little while as well, so a little bit more action coming in Cooper's way. And again, I'm surprised because it seemed like out there Elmos was getting more of the public picking, a lot of more public support overall as a whole. I think there's a little bit more hype as far as popularity goes for Elmos as well. She's just, I mean, obviously fighting a girl like De Randami, I mean, that's a tough thing to do in your UFC debut. I mean, one of the best strikers, if not the best striker, I think in the women's bantamweight division. I mean, in your UFC debut, being outclassed, outreached, everything was going against her in that fight. So Mose did get finished in that fight, didn't have a successful UFC debut. I think that's kind of fresh in everybody's mind here. But overall, as a fighter, Mose is definitely a pretty solid fighter. I mean, she's dropping down to the bantamweight, or I should say, to the 115-pound division, to the strawweight division here. I think she's going to, if the weight cut goes well, she's going to be in the right place. I don't think she belongs up there in the bantamweight division. I think she should be. I mean, especially with her height. I mean, she's only 5'3", and if she brings her power down with her to 115 pounds, man, she could definitely be a force. The girl is aggressive. I mean, right off the rip, when a bell, sounds, she goes after it. And she has that kind of power that she could do some early damage. A lot of girls can't withstand what she's going to bring as far as pace goes. And then, of course, she also actually goes for takedowns and has wrestling. And on the ground, she's not bad. She drops some ground and pound. She's able to control a little bit. So she can be dangerous in all areas of the game. Now, her submission game could get better for sure. So that's one area that she needs to work on and keep on improving. A lot of the same things could be said with Cooper. I mean, again, I was a little bit surprised that the public came in on Cooper, but I can understand it, and I do see it. I mean, Cooper, of course, her background, she's a tough 23 finalist. She lost in the championship fight to Suarez by submission. I don't take that really as a letdown for Cooper. I think that was a very difficult fight for her. I mean, Suarez, I think, is a beast, and I think she's going to do that to a lot of fighters. I mean, Cooper just simply got outclassed in that fight, but this is a different type of matchup for her, so she's not going to have to really, I think, worry about some of the same things she had to worry about in that fight. So, again, I give her the benefit of the doubt there. She did make the final, so you got to give her credit for that. Going through the Ultimate Fighter and always making the championship fight, you got to take your hat off to that person. So she went through it. She made it there. Again, didn't have success, but she's back here to see what she can do after the fact. I mean, but getting into her skill set, I mean, Cooper does have some nice boxing, her footwork, her movement. She's got clean technique. She's got a little bit of power that goes along with it. So her aggression, if she's not careful, could get her in trouble here against a girl like Cooper, because she does have accuracy in the feet and she knows how to punch. Now, she does also go for takedowns and has decent top control from the top as well. And also capable of hitting submissions. So I think on the ground overall, Cooper has an advantage over Elmos. And on the feet, despite a lot of people, I think, thinking that Elmos is aggression and she's kind of the more dangerous fighter, I think Cooper actually can be a little bit more technical and pick her apart a little bit more on the feet as well. So I do give some of the advantages in this fight to Cooper. And I think if Elmos doesn't overwhelm Cooper, I think if it hits the scorecards, Cooper's going to be the one that gets the win here. So I do agree with your early action. I think that out of these girls, even though they're both similar, I kind of lean a little bit more towards Cooper because I think she is the more complete fighter. So those of you that came in early at 5 dimes and gobbled up that plus money, I think it was the right move. So congrats on getting a pretty good number. I don't think you're going to see anything near that number. Even if this fight settles back down to a pick'em fight, I think you guys still got a great price. So again, she's got to go out there and win this thing though, but I think she could do it. So I'm going to pick her to win.
And I'm going to slightly disagree here. I mean, the main thing is it all for me depends on how Elmos performs dropping down not one weight class, but 2 weight classes. Cause, in Invicta and other promotions, there is a women's 125-pound weight class. And even though, in my opinion, Elmos was not a natural, women's bantamweight whatsoever, she took that fight on short notice, basically jumped up a weight class to do it. This is a big drop down. That's 20 pounds. That's a lot, especially when you're already that small. So, I do expect that this weight cut is going to be difficult. And if it's really difficult, then that could, help Amanda Bobby Cooper a lot because, Elmos won't be able to keep up that high pace she likes to push on the feet. Now, in Elmos' UFC debut, it obviously didn't go very well. She was facing one of the best strikers in the world in regards to, women, MMA fighters, and she just got overwhelmed and TKO'd in the first round. That's not going to happen this time around. Amanda Bobby Cooper is a decent striker. She is, but she doesn't pack that kind of power that, Germaine de Randami has. So, and she doesn't have the technique either. So I expect Elmos to be the better striker in this fight. The difference, though, could be if Amanda Bobby Cooper is able to get some takedowns, because even though she got completely dominated by Tatiana Suarez, Amanda Bobby Cooper's ground game is actually pretty decent, and she probably should have a small edge against most fighters in the women's strawweight division, and she should definitely have an edge over Elmos. Now, if you go back and look at her performance against Suarez, I mean, it was just one-sided. I mean, she landed one strike, she got taken down 3 times, and eventually submitted. That's not going to happen this time around. So, I think Amanda Bobby Cooper can relax a little bit, just try to focus on her all-around game. And I expect this fight to be competitive, But if Elmos is able to make this weight cut successfully, and if she's able to bring down some of the strength that she held in the higher weight classes, I think she can fend off those takedowns and then keep the fight standing, push a really high pace, and then just do a lot of damage on Amanda Bobby Cooper, either picking up a TKO or winning a decision over the course of 3 rounds. Although I would prefer a TKO because I don't know exactly how good her conditioning is going to be in her first weight cut down to the women's strawweight division. So I'm tentatively picking Anna Elmos here, but I don't have a ton of confidence in it. Now moving up to the lightweight division, we have Kevin Lee, who is 13-2, taking on Magomed Mustafayev, who is 13-1. Now Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Up in Lee, minus 150, the comeback on Mustafayev at plus 110 right now. It is Kevin Lee, the dog, actually. Mustafayev is at minus 115. Kevin Lee is minus 105. So to my surprise, line flipped, and Mustafayev is the slight favorite now. Basically, pick him because they're looking at Don Best on the screen right now. There's a lot of places that have exactly minus 110 either way. So it'll probably be rocking back and forth with Lee becoming favorites, flipping to Mustafayev and vice versa. It'll probably go back and forth and settle around somewhere near pick 'em. Again, I'm a little bit surprised by the early action, though, because Lee is the more recognized fighter. He's been in the UFC longer. He's really had some pretty impressive performances, but it's the performances that were not so impressive that have caused the action to go against him here. And it's basically comes down to his chin. I think a lot of people have seen in the past before, even though he did only suffer that loss to Santos, which, by the way, Santos is a grappler. Even though he's improved his striking, you got to give Santos credit, but Lee should not lose a fight like that by KO. He's been rocked before in the past, though, as well. So that's a problem with Lee. It's not – I think a lot of people lost confidence in his chin, and that's exactly what Mustafayev brings to the table in this fight. He's an aggressive, powerful striker. So if he catches Lee's chin, he's going to put him out. That's why the people gobbled up that plus 110 and now made him the favorite along the way. So I don't think you're going to see Mustafayev as a dog unless some heavy, sharp action comes in on Lee on fight day, and then it might get back to that spot. But right now you're probably going to have to lay juice. Either way, it looks like around a pick 'em type of price when this line does settle. And it's tough because, I mean, I can see it. I can see Mustafayev landing and knocking Lee out, or I could see Lee being the better fighter. He's a longer fighter overall. He's not bad, really, even offensively on the feet. He mixes things up well. He could do some damage. On the ground is where his best attribute is. He gets the fight to the floor oftentimes. I mean, he's able to control. He's able to look for the submission and finish the fight on the ground as well. If not, he'll grind you out and get the win. So Lee has, again, what I said, accomplished a lot in the lightweight division. He's just been a little bit of a letdown. I think there's more expectations out there for him to perform well. So hopefully, if he survives against a guy like Mustafayev, then that chin will get a little bit more respect back. And then Lee, man, I mean, he's the type of fighter with his skill set alone that could realistically make a run. I mean, again, with his skill set, again, there's some question marks with his chin or whatnot, but he's the type of fighter that could definitely contend for the lightweight title if he gets his act together and his chin holds up. So that's how talented Lee can be. He's only 24 years old. Let's not forget that. So if he keeps on improving, sky's the limit for him. But again, he's got a very tough out here in Mustafayev. Mustafayev, there's also a concern with his takedown defense at times. I know he's been working on it. He's improved it for sure, but there's been spots in his past that he has been put on the ground. He has been controlled a little bit, and Lee's definitely a fighter that can do that and possibly even finish him on the ground. So Mustafayev's going to need to keep this fight upright and fight his type of fight where he's aggressive, he's powerful, and he looks for the knockout against a guy like Lee. And if so, he's going to be successful. So for me, it's a tough one. I could see Mustafayev winning this fight, and again by knockout, but I'm going to have to still side a little bit more with Lee because I think his skill set overall is better suited for this fight, and if his chin holds up, he probably wins this fight. So my pick is going to be Kevin Lee to win.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. For me, this fight entirely revolves around Kevin Lee's chin. Magomed Mustafayev has had 2 fights in the UFC so far. Both were knockout victories or TKO victories. So Kevin Lee is going to definitely have to protect the chin, but for the most part, he is better than Mustafayev. I mean, he is quick. He is more athletic. He has, I believe, a better ground game. He has an aggressive submission game, excellent ground and pound. And on the feet, I think he's probably a little bit more well-rounded on the feet as well, mixing in some solid overall striking with some heavy leg kicks. So Kevin Lee is the complete package. The only issue with him whatsoever is the fact that Leonardo Santos connected with a big shot on him and put him out. So if Lee can protect his chin against Mustafayev, which is not going to be 100% easy. It's not going to be a cakewalk to do that. But if Kevin Lee can protect his chin against Mustafayev, then I expect him to just outwork him, whether it's on the feet, whether it's on the ground, you name it. I just think that he is the more aggressive, more well-rounded fighter. And I think, he's faced better competition, you name it. I mean, Kevin Lee is the real deal. It's just the chin. You got to protect that chin. And if he does that, then he should win. So, I'm basically, there is definitely a chance that Mustafayev connects with something, but for the most part, you got to side with the more well-rounded fighter, and Kevin Lee is the more well-rounded fighter, so he is my pick. Now, dropping down to the flyweight division, we have Kyoji Horiguchi, who is 17-2, taking on Ali Bagautinov, who is 14-4. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in Horiguchi, minus 260, the comeback on Bagautinov at plus 180. And right now it's Horiguchi minus 175, Bagautinov at plus 155. So Bagautinov getting some of the early action and support, and I do understand it as well. So the dog goes from basically plus 180 on the opener to plus 155 right now. A little bit of a drop. I'm sure we'll see some balanced action for the sportsbooks on this fight, especially with parlays and whatnot, and with Horiguchi coming back in. But that being said, this should be awesome. I mean, you got two of the best flyweights in the world going at it. In my opinion, they're both top 5 flyweights for sure right now. I mean, both talented fighters, both still fairly young. I mean, obviously Horiguchi only 26, but Bagautinov being 31 years old, I know he's getting kind of, I guess, in that elder category for the flyweights out there. But that being said, I still think he's got a lot left in the tank, and he's performing at a high pace as well. So a lot to like about Bagautinov and a lot to like about Horiguchi. So this should be fireworks from the start. I mean, a lot of similar things. Both these guys have pretty good stand-up. Both these guys have really good wrestling, and both these guys have submission skill on the ground to go along with it. Even though they don't use it as much as you like to see, especially Horiguchi, they both are capable. So across the board, I think they match up relatively well. We're going to see if it hits the scorecards. It's going to be a very competitive decision. I think it's going to be like a 2-1 type of fight, 29-28 type of decision for Horiguchi probably. I think what's going to be the difference here for Horiguchi is his speed, and I think his athleticism in general overall on the feet. I think he's going to be able to just basically dodge a lot of the things that Bagautinov is going to throw. His footwork's a little bit better. I think he's going to be a little bit harder of a puzzle to solve for Bagautinov, and he's going to be landing a little bit more clean as the fight goes. So both these guys are dangerous enough. Both these guys have power enough to stop each other. I mean, both these guys are tough as far as chin goes, so I doubt that happens. But, I mean, as far as finishing ability, again, on the feet, they're capable. I just think they're going to neutralize each other out for the most part. And I think, if anything, Horiguchi might get a brief top control if it does hit the ground, or on the feet, he's going to be the better point fighter in this spot here as well. So great fight. I just slightly lean a little bit towards more Horiguchi, and I think he's probably going to come away with the W here. I think, in my opinion, again, at age 26, Horiguchi will close that gap and kind of be the contender, the true legit contender again to Mighty Mouse. I know he's fought that fight before and he lost, but I think with his age and his ability to improve, I think he's going to be legitly the number 2 flyweight in the world for a while. And then if anybody can dethrone a guy like Demetrius Johnson, it might be, if he does improve a little bit more, obviously, a guy like Horiguchi. So sky's the limit for him. And again, I think he is potentially the second best flyweight in the world with, I mean, that's a stacked division, but I do think that Horiguchi is the man to beat right now outside of Demetrius Johnson. And I think a fight like this is probably going to keep that going for him.
Yeah, honestly, this could be the battle of the 2 best flyweights in the UFC that are not named Demetrius Johnson. I mean, Ali Bagautinov in his last fight against Herrera, he looked as good in that fight as he has ever looked in his entire career. I mean, his striking was on point. His counters were sharp. His takedowns were excellent. His top control was great. His defense was good. I mean, I know Herrera's not an elite flyweight, but I mean, you could not have looked better in that fight than Ali Bagautinov did. I mean, he looked like a world beater. And Kyoji Horiguchi, I mean, what more can you say about this kid? I know, personally, I have him ranked as the second best flyweight on the planet, right behind Demetrius Johnson. And yeah, he's already fought Johnson and he lost that fight with 1 second to go in the 5th round. But, honestly, he just faced Johnson too soon. I mean, he's a kid that needed a little bit more experience before battling someone as good as Johnson. And he was kind of the victim of the poor depth in the flyweight division. Now, for this actual matchup, Bagautinov, the biggest thing going against him is I just don't think that he can handle Horiguchi's speed. Horiguchi is so quick. I mean, you watched his last fight against Neil Seery, and Seery is an excellent striker. Horiguchi knocked him down like 6 times. I mean, just absolutely crushed Neil Seery over the course of 3 rounds. Seery was just too tough for his own good and was able to survive the fight. Now, Bagatinov, he is also extremely tough. I really haven't seen him in a situation where he was even rocked or hurt in a fight. So I expect how this fight's going to play out is Kyoji Horiguchi is going to be keeping his distance, and then he will just step in, crack Bagatinov, and then get out before Bagatinov can really fire back. Now, maybe over the course of 3 rounds, Bagatinov starts to get the timing down. Maybe Bagatinov tries to work in some wrestling, because Demetrius Johnson was able to get Horiguchi on his back and keep him down for a good amount of time in their fight. So that is one thing that Bagatinov might have going for him here. I do think his wrestling might be as good, if not better, than Horiguchi's. But for the most part, I just think the youth and speed of Horiguchi and that just explosive quickness is going to be a little bit too much. And in the worst case scenario, I probably see Horiguchi winning a decision where he's a little overly cautious. And best case scenario, I mean, these guys just go to war with each other. But I think Horiguchi is going to be a little smarter than that, and he'll pick Bagatinov apart instead and pick up a decision. So my pick is going to be Kyoji Horiguchi. Now moving up to the middleweight division, we have Magnus Siedenblad, who is 14-4, taking on UFC newcomer Jack Marshman, who is 20-5. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Another Cage Warriors champion, a middleweight champ, making his UFC debut with Marshman here. I opened Siedenblad minus 230, the comeback on Marshman at plus 170. Right now looking over 5 dimes at a Siedenblad minus 225. Marshman is plus 185. So line margins have tightened up a little bit again here. Tough one to bet, honestly, because Siedenblad, man, I mean, again, talk about skill set. The guy, he's long for the weight class at 185 pounds, so his length is tough to deal with, but then you throw in his skill on top of it, where he does have some pretty underrated striking. I mean, he uses that length well. He's got a little bit of power. He's got some finishing ability on the feet as well. It's his defense on the feet that worry me a little bit. And again, talk about chins. That chin, he's got kind of that tall man's defense where he does get clipped and he's hittable. And the problem is his chin, I don't, again, trust it that often, especially against a powerhouse like Marshman. That's what makes it tough in this spot, because Siedenblad, in my opinion, is definitely the better fighter in this spot here overall. I mean, on the feet, it's going to be interesting. If he can't utilize that distance and keep Marshman on the outside, he might be in some serious trouble here. But overall, as far as the ground game goes, his wrestling is a little bit unorthodox, but it's effective. And once he gets you on the ground, Siedenblad has some nasty submissions, and he's able to finish fights quickly. So on the ground, I think is his biggest advantage over a guy like Marshman overall. Even though Marshman's never been submitted officially in his career, I still think the Siedenblad offensively is going to be a little bit too much for him to handle. Now, defensively, though, Siedenblad has suffered some defeats. I mean, you get on his back, you get to position on him. You're able to basically sub him out as well. So defensively is where it's at with Siedenblad. He needs to improve on the feet, on the ground, in those aspects of the game. But offensively, he's one of the toughest middleweights to deal with, again, with his length and with his skill set. So that being said, Marshman getting to him a little bit. I just mentioned he was the former Cage Warriors middleweight champion. He's a KO artist. That's basically what he does. He's a striker, heavy-handed, boxing type of style, pushes forward, throwing heavy leather. He digs to the body well, which you got to love. And he also mixes in some kicks. He's got decent takedown defense overall, but I think compared to a guy like Siedenblad and what he can do and maybe get Marshman down, is going to be tough for him. So he's going to have to basically sprawl, brawl, try to keep this fight upright and try to land a big bomb. He's capable of doing so. That's what makes it tough. But I'm going to have to side with the better overall fighter here. I'm going to pick Siedenblad to win this fight. As far as the betting window goes, though, I don't know. I'd approach this fight definitely with some caution, because I wouldn't be surprised if Marshman gets one through and lands and knocks Siedenblad out. So Siedenblad definitely has some momentum going right now. He's got a couple quality wins he's putting together. So got to go with him. I think he is definitely a talented fighter, and the more talented, at least, of the two.
Jack Marshman is definitely a talented fighter making his UFC debut here, but I think that they're throwing him in there against somebody with a little bit too much experience. I would have expected that the UFC would give Marshman somebody that's maybe only had 1 or 2 UFC fights, or maybe somebody else that's making their UFC debut, kind of like they did further down the card. But they're throwing him in there against somebody with a lot of experience in Magnus Siedenblad, who has performed really well for the most part in his UFC career. I mean, if you look at Siedenblad, I mean, he's on a 4-fight win streak ever since losing his UFC debut. I mean, that's serious business. And for the most part, he's beaten some pretty good fighters. I mean, Krzysztof Jotko, that's a guy that's legit top 15 right now. And Siedenblad was able to get a submission over him. Siedenblad was able to use his takedowns to defeat a solid striker in Scott Askham. And then Siedenblad even picked up a TKO victory in his last fight. And that's not something he's traditionally been known for, considering he's more of a grappler. So Siedenblad is really starting to put it all together. Now, the thing Marshman does best is he is just really, really aggressive. Whether it's in the stand-up, he'll just get in your face and go after you, or with his wrestling, he'll try to get some takedowns and then just try to beat you up on the canvas. But the issue here is in the stand-up, Marshman is giving up a lot of reach. So if Siedenblad can utilize, straight punches and jabs, I think he can do some serious damage there. Although, again, Siedenblad is not known for his striking. He is not a super technical striker. So if Marshman's aggressive enough, I think he can potentially overwhelm Siedenblad on the feet. You did see Scott Askham do some damage on Siedenblad in the stand-up department. It was just Siedenblad made up for it with the takedowns. Now, where Marshman could definitely get himself into trouble is a lot of times he will start to get takedowns if he's getting things going on the feet, maybe just to mix it up. And if he does that, I think Siedenblad could tie him in knots like a pretzel on the canvas. Siedenblad is very long, very lanky, very tricky on the canvas. He has great chokes, good guillotines that can come out of nowhere, like you saw in the Jotko fight. Siedenblad is just a very, very dangerous fighter that is capable of doing a lot of different unique things in different situations. So I just think this is a bit of a tough matchup here for Marshman. And unless Marshman is really able to turn that aggression up a notch and is able to keep that up, or maybe land something heavy and knock Siedenblad out, unless any of that happens, then I expect Siedenblad to probably get the win either by honestly, TKO, submission, or decision. So my pick is going to be Magnus Siedenblad. Now dropping back down to the flyweight division, we have Ian McCall, who is 13-5-1, taking on Neil Seery, who is 16-12. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in McCall, minus 475. The comeback on Seery at plus 325. Looking over at 5 dimes. Currently, Seery did get some respect, get some action in his way, because right now it's McCall minus 335. The comeback on Seery is plus 275. So from plus 325 down to plus 275 on Seery right now. People snatching up the dog money. I mean, Seery is one of those guys. If you look at his record just blindly, you're going to think, this guy's a 500 type of fighter. I mean, he can't be that good or whatnot, but man, he's way above and beyond what his record indicates, as we all know. I mean, he's faced top-notch competition, not just in the UFC, throughout his career, even on the Cage Warrior scene. The guy's just performed against decent competition and performed well against most competitors. So the guy is definitely a lot better than his record indicates, and he can hang with some tremendous fighters. It's just that he's fought pretty much tough competition throughout his whole career. So that being said, there's another fight on his hands with the same type of situation. I mean, McCall is obviously one of the most respected flyweights out there. I mean, he's accomplished a lot. He's obviously had those wars with Demetrius Johnson. I mean, he's been the closest man really to dethrone the champ there is out there. So 125. So McCall has had some serious success out there, and he's got the total package. So for Seery, it's going to be another difficult matchup, because if you look at it across the board, I mean, the stand-up game is where I think Seery excels the most. He definitely has some good striking. He's very effective with it. He can knock you out on the feet in most cases. If you get tagged by him, he's got that kind of power, especially for a flyweight. He's tough as nails. I mean, he's relentless with his pace. So there's a lot of good things he brings to the table here. But McCall, his footwork, his movement, his speed advantage over Seery, it's not going to be easy for Seery to do to have a lot of success against a guy like McCall. Then, of course, on the ground, both these guys are capable. Of course, I think McCall does have the better wrestling here. If it goes to the ground, he's going to get top position. McCall's sub defense is pretty decent as well. So I don't think, even though Siri does have some submissions to go along with it, with his overall game, I think he's going to have trouble submitting a guy like McCall. So I think McCall can basically control this fight, whether it comes down to the wrestling. I know, again, Siri does have decent takedown defense, so it's not going to be easy for McCall rather, to take Siri down, but it's possible for him to do something like that and mix it up a little bit with the stand-up. So I do think that McCall needs to be a little bit more active. I know it's not always his fault. He's been getting fighters pulling out on him recently, as far as, backing out last minute after weigh-ins. It's been kind of crazy for McCall. I mean, it really has been. But that being said, he's been inactive because of that. So we need to see McCall get a little bit more active. He's 32 years old. Siri's actually 37. So both these guys, obviously, we'll see how many fights they have left in their careers, but I think McCall does have another run left in him if he starts becoming again a little bit more active and things go his way. So it's all going to start here. I think a win over Siri is definitely going to bring him enough respect out there to keep his momentum going and hopefully get another fight soon. So I just think stylistically it's a tough matchup for Siri. I do think he'll be competitive. I do think he's a warrior. So I do believe the line was a tad high, especially on the opener, and now might be a little bit more down to earth. But still, that being said, I'd be surprised if McCall loses to Siri. So I'm going to pick McCall to win.
Yeah, this fight could potentially be a trap fight. I mean, Ian McCall has had his last 3 fights canceled. The first, he pulled out because of an injury. The last 2, his opponents both missed weight terribly and so bad that the fight got canceled. So it's been a long time since he stepped into the cage. The last time he fought was against John Lineker when Lineker was still a flyweight. And since then, Lineker's now one of the top contenders in the bantamweight division with I think 4 wins in the bantamweight division. So it's been a really long time since Ian McCall has stepped into the cage. Neil Siri, on the other hand, I mean, he just got the brakes beat off of him in his last fight by Kyoji Horiguchi, and just got dropped, battered over the course of 3 rounds. And who knows what that takes out of you as a competitor, especially somebody that is potentially 1 fight away from retiring, which I think Siri is. I mean, he's 37 years old with a 16-12 record. I mean, there's not a lot of fights left in him at this point, and Ian McCall is definitely a tough cookie. Now, overall, in terms of pure stand-up, I think these guys are relatively evenly matched. Siri does have a little bit more power in his hands, although McCall might be able to push a little bit higher pace. But for the most part, I think Siri might be the better striker here between the two of them. Now, when you add everything else in, though, that's where McCall has the advantage. I mean, McCall's wrestling is better. McCall's ground game is way better. So if McCall uses all of his game, if he's healthy and he has some explosion to his takedowns, and if he can stay on top, this should be a walk in the park fight for him. But Ian McCall is not always the type of guy that fights with the best fight IQ. So if he just wants to make this a pure stand-up fight, if he gets hit and laughs and, his eyes turn red and he just wants to hit him back and this turns into a 3-round stand-up war, then Neil Siri has a really good chance of pulling off the upset. But if McCall fights smart and uses his full game, he should win this fight, honestly. He just is a better, more well-rounded fighter at this point in his career. So I'm going to side with Ian McCall, but I definitely do want you guys to exercise caution here. This is not as big of a walk in the park as some people are making it out to be, especially when you factor in fight IQ. Now, moving on to the first fight on the main card, we have a featherweight contest between Artem Lobov, who is 13-12-1 with 1 no contest, taking on Teruto Ishihara, who is 10-2-2. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
I opened Ishihara minus 260, the comeback on Lobov at plus 180. Right now, looking over 5 dimes, it is Ishihara minus 255. Lobov is plus 215, so line margins have tightened up a little bit. 2 action coming on this fight. I'm sure we'll see a little bit of movement as we get closer to fight time. Just a tough fight. because you know what these guys both bring. Or obviously those guys that are betting on the UFC, those of you out there that are betting probably know what these guys bring. Both of them have a ton of knockout power, and that's the way they get things done. More so Ishihara, and especially the way he goes out about things. I mean, with his fights, the guy is a wild man. I mean, outside of his social media, if his Twitter, for those of you guys that have been following him on Twitter, know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, that's even crazy too, but his fighting style is just as insane, but he's effective with it. I mean, the guy's a warrior. He goes out there, he's aggressive, he's a southpaw. Both these guys are southpaw, by the way, so it's going to be interesting to see who switches up a little bit and goes a little bit different as they go. But that being said, it's probably going to be Ishihara with that too as well. Well, kind of throwing an unorthodox style out there, but I mean, Ishihara again, he puts it all out there. He's an aggressive striker. He's capable of knocking people out. I think Lobov is going to probably be a little bit too slow for Ishihara here. Lobov, again, you can say a lot of the same things. He tries to push forward, pushes a high pace, is definitely a threat with the knockout. Probably, again, not as well known for knockouts as Ishihara for sure. Especially, I think he got more of that reputation from the Ultimate Fighter show, honestly, than anything else. But he does have a little bit of power to go along with it. Ishihara has to be careful. And with that wild, aggressive style, I mean, Lobov could land and put him out there. I think that's why a lot of people are tentative again about betting this fight. So you basically have striker versus striker in this matchup. Of course, Ishihara has been training with Alpha Male, so his wrestling and his ground game is getting better and it's improving. I think Lobov is improving that area as well, but probably not as fast. So I think overall, you got to think in this situation, Ishihara is a younger fighter. I think he's the better fighter. He's going to have a little bit of reach over Lobov as well. And I think he's going to be faster just across the board. Even with the wrestling, I think he's going to have the advantage in the spot. So I think if it doesn't end in knockout by some miracle, because I don't think this fight ends up hitting the scorecards, I think Ishihara even can win if he hits the scorecards as well. So just stylistically, kind of a tough matchup for Lobov. I think Ishihara is going to be the better striker, and he's probably going to hard to finish Lobov, but he probably does finish him in this spot, I think. I mean, these guys are going to be throwing leather, and I think Ishihara is just going to get the better of it. So my pick is going to be Ishihara to win.
Yeah, looking at this fight, I mean, Artem Lobov had a nice performance in his last bout against Chris Avila, but honestly, I was expecting that he would not just win that fight, but put Avila away. I mean, Avila is one of the least experienced, least skilled fighters in the entire UFC roster, and Lobov was only able to win a decision against him. Now, Ishihara, he has really kind of taken the UFC featherweight division by storm. I mean, the guy just goes out there, wings haymakers, and doesn't just win, but just absolutely slaughters opponents. His last two fights, I mean, just brutal knockouts. Ishihara throws everything with fight-ending intentions. He is extremely exciting. The only issue I have with Ishihara right now is what happens if he isn't able to put his opponent away inside the first, round and a half. I mean, because Julian Erosa, he had him in big trouble, got him out early in the second round. Horacio Gutierrez connected with some monster shots, put him away in the first round. In his fight against Hirota, though, the draw, I mean, that was a fight, or it was, the draw, it was a fight where he landed a lot of nasty shots early, had Hirota in a lot of trouble, and then slowed down really badly as that fight wore on. So if Ishihara is not able to put Lobov away, maybe Lobov can get something going. The problem, though, is Lobov, for the most part, is a stand-up fighter, and he does have some power, too, but he's going to be giving up some reach here. I mean, Lobov has kind of like the T-Rex arms. I mean, he just doesn't have a reach advantage against anybody. So I guess the good thing is he's used to that, so he does know how to fight with a reach disadvantage. But for the most part, I expect this fight to be a back-and-forth, entertaining brawl, and at some point Ishihara connects with something just downright vicious and puts Lobov away. But if Lobov is able to avoid that nasty knockout blow over the first half of the fight, there definitely is a chance that Lobov can turn the tides in this fight as Ishihara starts to slow down. So I'm picking Ishihara, but this potentially could be a live betting scenario. Maybe heading into the third round, Lobov is like a plus 1,000 underdog and Ishihara is gassing. Maybe you take a shot. But for now, I'm definitely siding with Ishihara. Now moving back up to the heavyweight division, we have Timothy Johnson, who is 10-2, taking on UFC newcomer and former Bellator heavyweight champion Alexander Volkov, who is 26-6. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
Up in Volkov, minus 150, the comeback on Johnson at plus 110. To my surprise, slightly, the odds are now Johnson minus 130. Comeback on Volkov is at plus 110. So line flipped. It was staying at Pick'em there for a little while as well, but now it came back towards Johnson a little bit. So we'll probably see another spot where this line kind of hovers back and forth a little bit, maybe floats around Pick'em. But I understand, again, the early action. I mean, if you look at it, Volkov is probably obviously the more well-known fighter. I mean, Johnson in the UFC, I know he's had a few fights in the UFC, and now Volkov's coming into the UFC, but Volkov being the former Bellator heavyweight champion, I think, again, the hype around Volkov throughout his career has been a little bit higher than Johnson. I mean, I think a lot of the overall MMA community doesn't respect Timothy Johnson all that much just yet. But in a fight like this, if he goes out there and keeps performing like he has, he'll definitely earn some more fans, and this popularity level will come back up to par a little bit. But stylistically, this is a good fight for Johnson and not so much for Volkov. Now, Volkov is definitely a talented fighter. Again, he's more of a striking-based fighter. He's able to use that long reach. I mean, the guy's 6'7", so he's going to have a reach advantage over most people in the heavyweight division. But he does have, again, sometimes he has that tall man defense, but not just that. Because he's so tall, it makes wrestlers kind of easier for him to get put on his back and get controlled on the ground as well. Now, he has been working his submission game. He's capable of hitting triangles, arm bars, or whatnot. His ground game and his guard game is getting a little bit more active. He's not as easy to take down to the ground. Volkov is not. So he's definitely improving in that area. So it's going to be interesting to see how much improvement he has made. And for the UFC picking him up, being a former Bellator champion fighter, that's going to be interesting because he's going to want to prove that, you know, he belongs in the UFC on this roster as well. And UFC is definitely feeding him a guy that can beat him in Johnson. So this is interesting, intriguing throughout. I mean, if you look at really the in-depth story here, but Johnson overall, I think he's been pretty impressive. I mean, his last fight against Tibura, I think, was a very solid win, probably an underrated win for him. I mean, it was a pretty solid fight. His original UFC debut against Abdurakhimov was pretty tough as well, and it was pretty impressive. So I think he's got two quality wins. Now, the fight in between against Jared Rosholt, he lost a decision there. Obviously, Rosholt, another wrestler, he's no longer on the UFC roster. I'm kind of surprised about that, but that being said, he just basically got beat at his own game in that fight. Now, Volkov doesn't bring that kind of style to the table here against Johnson. Now, Johnson, actually, even though he's more of a wrestling type of fighter, I mean, he's the type of guy that can clinch you up against the fence, dirty box a little bit, have some success that way as well. So inside the clinch, Johnson actually does some good work. He has a little bit of power to go along with it. So he doesn't just need to wrestle. I mean, even if he closes the gap and keeps Volkov up against the cage, he could probably do some damage that way as well. But in spaces where Johnson does not want to be against Volkov, that's where Volkov's going to be able to utilize that reach and have a little bit more success. So if Volkov's able to keep this fight standing and keep Johnson out of him and at distance, he's probably going to win this fight. Outside of that, though, I do believe Johnson can close the distance. Johnson can get some takedowns and just be his kryptonite. I mean, we've seen Volkov lose by getting basically out wrestled and being put on his back. I think Johnson can follow that same game plan and have success. So I am going to pick Timothy Johnson to win this fight. I do agree with the early action coming in on that plus money. So those of you guys that hopped on that plus 110 right now, I do think you guys got a good number. And I'm not so sure you're going to see Johnson at plus money unless there's a lot of big action that comes in on fight day and it flips the line back. And if that's the case, I think there will be some value on Johnson out there for those bettors. So my pick is going to be Timothy Johnson to probably win by decision here. I wouldn't even be surprised if we see a stoppage along the way. But that being said, I do think that Johnson wins the fight either way.
I've been really impressed with Timothy Johnson so far in his UFC run. The UFC debut against Shamil Abdurakhimov was extremely impressive. Gets a first-round TKO with a ground and pound. Most recently, he faced Marcin Tybura, another really talented Russian fighter, a fighter that's way more well-rounded. Actually, Tybura might be Polish, but regardless, way more well-rounded than Alexander Volkov. And Timothy Johnson outworks him mostly on the feet. He did get a takedown, but for the most part, he actually outstruck him. And Tybura is actually a very talented striker, as you saw in his last fight where he won by a head kick. So, and his only loss was against Jared Rosholt in getting out grappled. Now, Alexander Volkov, he's a guy that is extremely long, extremely lanky. He pretty much just wants to keep the fight standing, use his range, get the jabs off, use some kicks, and just straight punches and jabs in Timothy Johnson's face. And you know what? I just don't see him pulling that off over the course of 3 rounds. Volkov did have some impressive performances in Bellator. I mean, he beat Brett Rogers, he beat Rich Hale, he beat Vinicius Quiros, he beat Mighty Mo, he beat Blagoy Ivanov. I mean, he definitely is a solid fighter. He's talented. He clearly is talented. But when he faced guys that could take him down, he lost. Vitaly Menikov was able to knock him out, got a takedown, and then also just lit him up on the feet when he got inside. Tony Johnson was able to take him down, won a split decision. Chet Konga was able to get inside in the clinch, get a takedown, ugly the fight up a little bit, won a decision. So that has always been Alexander Volkov's kryptonite throughout his career. Now, in his last couple fights, Volkov did look good. He was able to pick up a knockout on the feet and then also actually a submission from his back. So he did get taken down, but ended up pulling off a submission. I just think against Timothy Johnson, Johnson is just so big, so strong, and just so bulky that it would be very difficult for Volkov to pull off a submission from his back. I don't see Volkov keeping Johnson away from him for 3 straight rounds. I see Johnson getting a takedown in every round. And over the course of 3 rounds, either Johnson potentially gets a TKO or wins a decision. I just don't think Volkov has enough pop in his hands that's going to stop Johnson in his tracks. Johnson is just incredibly tough. You saw that in his last fight where I believe he had like a broken arm and he just kept pushing. So Timothy Johnson is my pick here. I just think that he overwhelms Volkov a little bit with his size, toughness, and wrestling. Now, moving on to the lightweight division, we have the co-main event of the evening as Ross Pearson, who is 21-11 with 1 no contest, takes on Stevie Ray, who is 19-7. Now, Nick, where did you open this fight, and how has the public shifted things so far?
Up in Pearson, minus 190. The comeback on Ray at plus 150. Ray getting some respect. It's all the way down to even money for Ray. The comeback, or I should say, Pearson is now minus 120. The comeback is even money for Ray. So more action coming in Ray's way. I mean, he went from plus 150 to even money now. I'm sure we'll see some action back on Pearson as well. This is definitely a competitive fight. What it comes down to for me is, can Ray knock him out? I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm sure if it hits the scorecards, it'll be competitive. I mean, both these guys definitely are talented strikers, but I think overall Pearson is definitely the more talented of the two as far as the pure striking game goes. I think Pearson mixes things up well. He's faced top quality. I mean, top caliber fighters as far as striking game goes in the UFC. And every time he's had to step up in competition, Pearson has performed well. I mean, he's underrated in that aspect. I mean, against the best of the best out there, he struck with them, and he's actually, I mean, had some controversial losses against very good strikers. So, I mean, look at the Barboza fight for an example. Then that's just one. But at times also, he's been dropped and he's been knocked out in situations, I mean, that you wouldn't really expect. Now, the Iaquinta loss, of course, my knockout wasn't too long ago. I mean, that wasn't a big shock to me. In fact, I believe that Brian and I were on Iaquinta in that particular matchup. And this is a lot of similarities here. I think that's why people are coming in on Ray, because I think that they could see a situation where, I mean, it's a competitive striking battle back and forth, and Ray just drops him with one punch. I mean, we could see that happen with Pearson. I mean, I do believe that if Ray does not stop him, though, Pearson is a better fighter. I think they should neutralize each other as far as the wrestling goes, because both these guys primarily like to stand and bang anyway. So I think we'll probably see a striker versus striker matchup, which is probably going to be a good thing for a guy like Ray, because in his last fight against Patrick, he ended up getting out-grappled, and that's why he lost that fight. So this is definitely a more favorable matchup for both guys, striker versus striker, but I do have to lean a little bit more towards Pearson. I just think that he's a little bit more technically sound. I think he could push a more consistent pace for 3 rounds. And again, that experience factor against high quality competition probably comes into play here. And I think he edges it out. So Ray's game, I wouldn't be surprised if he lands one and knocks Pearson out here. I mean, he is the younger fighter, 26 years old. He's improved, I think, by leaps and bounds. I mean, if you watch some of his old fights with Cage Warriors, he was pretty solid there, but compared to what he is now, he's definitely improved. So if he keeps on improving, wouldn't be surprised to see him pull off the upset here. That's why a lot of people, I think, are coming in on Ray as well. But when it comes down to it, it's hard to pick against Pearson in a matchup like this. So I'm going to go his way. Hopefully he doesn't get knocked out.
Obviously, Stevie Ray looked awful in his last fight against Alan Patrick, and that's what happens when you face somebody that can completely take you out of your element. I mean, Stevie Ray is a striker. He is a guy that mixes it up with his hands. He's extremely aggressive, extremely powerful, but Patrick just repeatedly took him down, took him out of his element, and Ray never fully recovered, and he even gassed a little bit with the effort he was trying to get back to his feet. Now, against Ross Pearson, that threat is gone. So I expect this fight to be, for the most part, just a pure stand-up fight where both guys are just looking to knock each other's heads off. Now, obviously, Ross Pearson is way more experienced than Stevie Ray. Pearson has faced significantly better competition throughout his career than Stevie Ray, but Pearson does seem like, he's starting to slow down a little bit. He obviously had a poor performance against Will Brooks, was frustrated with himself, so he returned on super short notice to take on Jorge Masvidal in a welterweight fight and got, kind of just battered in that bout. Masvidal outstruck him over 2-1 in that fight. And for the most part, Ross Pearson's biggest enemy has kind of been himself. He is a bit of a counter striker, and when he's forced to lead, he does not really do enough at times. And I think both of these guys actually are more counter strikers, but in terms of pure punching power, I have to lean a little bit with Stevie Ray. I mean, when he hits somebody, they get hurt. Now Pearson does have some pretty good knockouts in his record as well, and he's faced some excellent strikers and beat them, like Paul Felder, Chad Laprise. So this is not going to be, a walk in the park for Stevie Ray. I expect this fight to be really competitive, and there is a very good chance that Ross Pearson neutralizes Stevie Ray's striking with just a solid counter-strike strategy. But I think, Stevie Ray being 6-7 years younger than Ross Pearson, being a little bit more powerful, being slightly longer, that could come into play here. So even though neither guy has looked great recently, I think Stevie Ray has a little bit more to offer and has a longer future in the UFC, and that power could definitely come into play because Ross Pearson has been knocked out in the past, and he has been getting rocked in fights. So I think Stevie Ray could connect with something nasty, especially when he's not really worried about the takedown. So I'm going to slightly side with Stevie Ray here, although Ross Pearson, it has been full of surprises throughout his career, and he could pull this one off too. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening, we have Gegard Mousasi, who is 46-2, taking on Uriah Hall, who is 13-7. Now, Nick, what's the MMA odds maker's perspective on this one?
I'm putting Mousasi minus 465, the comeback on Hall plus 340. And right now it's minus 550 for Mousasi. Hall is plus 425. Interesting considering Hall actually beat him last time out, and this is a rematch. But of course, again, if you guys were watching that fight, Mousasi was doing very well. Dominated that fight until he got caught with that spinning back kick, which was beautiful, by the way, from Hall. The accuracy, just everything about it, the timing on it, the technique about it. So you got to give Hall credit for landing that kick. It's not even a big shocker. That's the type of fighter Hall is. He's a very talented fighter on the feet, and he's more than capable of landing tremendous kicks. Look at the Ultimate Fighter performances that he had as well. So the hype all came from that type of product from Hall. That's what he's able to do. So that's what makes him dangerous in all fights. Hall has the ability to finish in just one kick, one punch, and pull people out. So surprising though, because Mousasi's been so solid throughout his career. But as Brian already mentioned, 46-2. 46-2. That's crazy. The amount of fights that Mousasi's had throughout his career. He's a seasoned vet, and there's no signs of him slowing down either. Obviously, he's gotten into the sport at an early age, fighting high competition, and it's paid off well because he's getting better and better. I think you can see the progression in his game. His wrestling was probably the weakest part of his game not too long ago, and he's addressed that, and he's become quite a threat with his offensive wrestling in his own right. In fact, that's how he was beating Hall so easy in the first the first time around in their first matchup, before he got caught, he was actually controlling the ground game very well. And I think he's capable of doing that outside of the elite level wrestlers or grapplers in the sport. I mean, outside of that, he's right up there. I mean, and especially for the middleweight division. I mean, there's not too many people that are going to out wrestle Mousasi. There's obviously a couple out there, but not too many. So Mousasi has a wrestling advantage in his fight, but not just that. Since his loss to Hall, if you look at him, his defense have actually tightened up. He's gotten better. I mean, he's fought in some tough opponents, some guys that could challenge him, and he's just blown right through them. So I think what's happened to Mousasi is he's gotten motivated, and that loss actually did him a lot of good. So I feel really bad for Hall right now, because I do believe that Mousasi has a chip on his shoulder. Obviously, they rematched this fight because everybody, including the UFC, kind of knows it was a fluke. I mean, again, you can't take anything away from Hall. He deserved to get that W. It's because of his skill that won it. But that being said, I think the better fighter out of the two is Mousasi. So hard not to go with him. I do believe he's going to win this fight. At the price, it's kind of insane. It's minus 550. I do expect it to probably come back down a little bit, with public just thinking, oh, hey, this guy beat him before type of scenario. Let's lay some cash on him. He might be able to do it again. I mean, I think it'll be more of a situation like that. So more kind of square bets coming in on Hall might drive the line down a little bit more, but overall, it's hard not to back Mousasi in this spot. So if you're betting this fight at the price, if it's 4 or 5 to 1, I'd say be careful, obviously, because you never know. It's a crazy sport, and Hall definitely does have that kind of power that can end things with one punch, as indicated in their last fight. But that being said, more times than not, Mousasi really should win this fight. I think it was kind of flukish in the first time, and I think he's going to probably redeem himself here. So my pick is Mousasi to win.
I think this fight is going to be a lot more like the first round of Mousasi versus Hall the last time they fought, and a lot less like the second round. Obviously, Mousasi was able to get a takedown on Hall, was on top of him for the whole round. Hall did showcase some pretty decent defense on the ground. He avoided most damage, avoided submissions. And then the second round, obviously, he landed that spinning back kick right to Mousasi's face as Mousasi ducked down. It was a lightning quick attack. Yes, it was lucky, but Uriah Hall is one of the few fighters in the world that can throw that kick that quickly with that much force. And it stunned Mousasi and set up the TKO victory. So yes, it was a bit lucky, but he did earn that victory. But I think Mousasi's learned from it. Obviously, if you look at his last 3 performances since that loss, Gegard Mousasi hasn't just won his fights, he has absolutely obliterated his opponents. I mean, Talis Ledet landed 17 strikes on him in a 3-round fight, while Mousasi landed 81 and had top position and even passed his guard. Thiago Santos got absolutely crushed in the first round of their fight. And then against Vitor Belfort, Mousasi outstruck Vitor 57-8 in a fight that was stopped in the second round. So, I mean, Mousasi has been a man possessed since that fight. I'm not saying that he took Uriah Hall lightly, because he did have a game plan going into that fight and he was using the game plan, but maybe he was taking him lightly a little bit. And this time, Uriah Hall has all of Mousasi's attention. Now, when Hall is, at his best, I mean, he is landing crazy, explosive, powerful strikes out of nowhere and doing amazing things. But Hall is not dangerous on the ground. And when fighters put a lot of pressure on him, he does kind of wilt a little bit if you watched the fight against Robert Whittaker. So I think this is a picture-perfect rematch for Gegard Mousasi to pick up a win and get one step closer to a title shot in the middleweight division. So my pick, I think Gegard Mousasi doesn't just win, but he steamrolls Uriah Hall, maybe second or third round submission. So my pick is Gegard Mousasi. So that'll do it for our full event breakdown for UFC Fight Night 99. Now, our premium bets for the event will be released this Friday following the weigh-in, so stay tuned for that if you're an MMA Oddsbreaker premium member. If we have a free play to give out, make sure to follow at MMA OB Premium on Twitter, because that's where we'll post them first. We can also notify you of our free bets via email alert if you prefer that method. Just send an email to picks@MMAOddsbreaker.com and we'll add you to our free bet mailing list. Special thanks to our sponsor, 5 Dimes Sportsbook. Good luck, everyone, and hopefully the betting gods are on your side this weekend.